Good day everyone, we are the Group 5. We are tasked to report about the history of art from Romanticism to Postmodernism. Let's define first the meaning of history of art. Art history is the study of objects of arts within their time period. Timeline of art history. There are 16 periods of art history, but I will only discuss the first 4, which are Romanticism, Realism, Art Nouveau, and Impressionism. So let's go first to the Romanticism. Romanticism, first defined as an aesthetic in literary criticism around 1800, gained momentum as an artistic movement in France and Britain. Imagination, emotion, and freedom are certainly the focal points of Romanticism. Next is Realism. Realism was an artistic movement that began in France in the 1850s. The 4 propositions are as follows. State-centrism, where the states are the most fundamental actors. Anarchy. The international system is anarchic or having no ruler. Egoism. All states within the system pursue narrow self-interest. Power politics. The primary concern of all states is power and security. The next one is Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau is an ornamental style of art that flourished between about 1890 and 1910. Throughout Europe and the United States. Art Nouveau is characterized by its use of long, sinuous, organic line and was employed most often in architecture, interior design, jewelry, glass design, poster, and illustration. And the Impressionism. Impressionism describes a style of painting developed in France during the mid to late 19th century. Characterizations of the style include small, visible brushstrokes that offer the bare impression of form and blended color and emphasis on the accurate depiction of light. Let us know some of the artists and their artworks during Romanticism to Impressionism. During Romanticism, one example of an artwork is The Nightmare. The Nightmare is a 1781 oil painting by Swiss artist Henri Fuseli. The painting's dreamlike and haunting erotic evocation of infatuation and obsession. The canvas seems to portray simultaneously a dreaming woman and the content of her nightmare. Another example is The Fighting Temeraire. It is an oil-on-canvas painting by the English artist Joseph Maillard William Turner. It can be seen as a symbol of the end of an era, with the sun setting on the days of elegant, tall-masted warships. The artworks during Realism is the Barge Howlers on the Volga. It is an 1870 to 1873 oil-on-canvas painting by artist Ilya Repin. It depicts 11 men physically dragging a barge on the banks of the Volga River. They are the point of collapse from exhaustion, oppressed by heavy hot weather. Another example is the painting Christina's World by American painter Andrew Yet, painted during 1948. It is one of the best-known American paintings of the mid-20th century. Christina's pose reflecting the hopelessness of her misunderstood and undiagnosed condition. During Art Nouveau, one example of an artwork is The Kiss. It is an oil-on-canvas painting with added gold leaf, silver and platinum by the Austrian symbolist painter Gustav Klimt. It was painted at some point in 1907 and 1908. In this work, the young woman's facial expression and closed eyes simultaneously evoke feelings of abandonment, ecstasy, and delight. Another example is the painting at the Moulin Rouge. It is an oil on canvas painting by French artist Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. It was painted between 1892 and 1895, where love is the central and most powerful theme of Moulin Rouge. During Impressionism, one example of an artwork is Olympia. It is a painting by Edouard Manet, first exhibited at 1865 in Paris Salon. Manet's painting shows a nude woman. All symbols in the painting represents wealth and sensuality. Another example is the Gare Saint-Lazare, or the arrival of a train. It was painted during 1877 and considered to be one of the iconic Monet painting because here the artist depicts signs of industrial revolution.
Good day everyone, my name is Maricel. Now I will continue the discussion about the history of art, the Post-Impressionism. Post-Impressionism is a predominantly French art movement that developed roughly between 1886 and 1905, which from the last Impressionist exhibition up to the birth of Fauvism. The movement emerged as a reaction against Impressionism and its concern for the naturalistic depiction of light and color. The characteristic of post-impressionists extended the use of vivid colors, thick application of paint, distinctive brush strokes. The real-life subject matter and were more inclined to emphasize the geometric forms, distort forms for expressive effect, and to use unnatural or arbitrary colors in their composition. The example of post-impressionism artwork, first one is Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. He used in oil canvas. He painted in June 1889. The second one is The Shed of the Erieux in 1892 by Paul Gauguin. He used oil paint and Hessian fabric. The top four famous post-impressionist artists, first one is Paul Cézanne in 1839 to 1906. The second one is Vincent van Gogh from 1853 and 1890. The third one is Georges Seurat from 1859 to 1892. The fourth one is Paul Gauguin from 1848 to 1903. Next, we move on the Fauvism. Fauvism is a style began around 1904 and continued beyond 1910. The movement as such lasted only a few years, from 1905 to 1908, and had three exhibitions. Associated artists Jean Metzinger and Henri Matisse. Associated artworks Le Bonheur de Very, Woman with Hat. First formally exhibited in Paris in 1905. The characteristic and style, first is bold, vibrant. The second, almost acidic colors used in an intuitive, a highly gestural application of paint. Fauvism was known for bold, vibrant, almost acidic colors. Example of Fauvism artworks, The Woman with a Hat from 1905 by Henri Matisse. He used an oil canvas that depicts Matisse's wife, Amélie. The second one is Jeu de Massacre, Slaughter by Georges Rouault from 1905. He used watercolor, gouache, India ink, and pastel on paper by 53 by 67 centimeter. The famous artists are Henri Matisse, the French artist. The second one is André Derain, French artist, painter, sculptor. The third one is Georges Braque, 20th century French painter. Now let's move on to the Expressionism. Expressionism is a movement initially in poetry and painting originating in Northern Europe around the beginning of the 20th century. Expressionism started 1905 and lasts until approximately 1920. The characteristic of Expressionism, they use convey the emotion and meaning rather than reality. Each artist had their own unique way of expressing their emotion in their art. The example of the artwork of the Expressionism, or the first one is The Scream in 1893 by Edvard Munch, one of the most iconic image of art. The Scream symbolizing the anxiety of the human condition. The second one is Several Circle by Wassily Kandinsky, the early modernist oil on canvas painting created by Wassily Kandinsky in 1926. His best-known work, Edvard Munch was a Norwegian painter, and the Wassily Kandinsky was Russian painter and art theorist. And now, the famous artist of Expressionism is Wassily Kandinsky in 1866 to 1944, to Edvard Munch 1863 to 1944. The third, Ernest Ludwig Kirchner 1880 to 1938. The fourth one is Franz Marc from 1880 to 1916. Now let's move on to the Cubism. Cubism is a highly influential visual arts style of 20th century that was created by principal the artists Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque in Paris between 1907 and 1904. The characteristics of the Cubism influential visual arts are abstract, broken mirror effect, rearranged, geometric, more than one view, simplified shapes. The Cubism style emphasized the flat, two-dimensional surface of the picture plane, rejecting the traditional technique of perspective foreshortening, modeling, and chiaroscuro, and refuting time-honored theories that art should initiate by nature. There are the two examples of the Cubism artwork by Pablo Picasso. The first one is Georges Braque, House at Estaq. I don't know what the pronounce this. Estaqui in 1908 is an oil canvas painting executed in 1908. Georges Braque was a major 20th century French painter, collagist, draftsman, paintmaker, and sculptor. Pablo Picasso was a Spanish painter, printmaker, sculptor. He was prolific influencers on 20th century. The painting defect pain representing universal suffering. The Weeping Woman in 1937, he used oil canvas. The painting defect Dora Maar, Picasso's Mistress and Muse, pain representing the universal suffering. Thank you.
Okay, next is Surrealism in 1916 to 1950. Surrealism emerged from the Dada art movement in 1916, showcasing works of art that defied reason. Surrealists denounced the rationalist mindset They blame these thoughts process on events like World War I and believe it to repress imaginative thoughts. Surrealists were influenced by Karl Marx and theories developed by Sigmund Freud, who explored psychoanalysis and the power of imagination. Then, for me, what is surrealism? From the word surreal, like dreamlike, bizarre, unreal, things things that don't seem like to tend to reality. Surrealism is an art movement developed in Europe in the aftermath of World War I. So art changed very dramatically after the First World War. People were so dramatized by the events that happened. Many of artists themselves part of the war or directly affected by it, whether through fighting in their home country or deaths of people that they love. And it was extremely difficult time for millions of people and artists especially were trying to find ways to deal with that extreme feelings of just depression and try to figure out how they can translate that into an artwork. And a lot of movements that developed around them were very much kind of the opposite alone. This feeling. Then they decided that everything is heavy right now, so let me all about nothing. Let's do art about completely meaningless. And so they really started focus on a lot of art like crazy reaction to think. And surrealism subject matter focused on dreams and the subconscious mind, so they wanted to get away from reality as much as they could. Thirst of surrealism. First is Max Ernst, Rene Magritte, Salvador Dali. So, Max Ernst created prior to and during World War I when he was working in a vanguard expressionist style. And the Rene Magritte created some of the most instantly recognizable image of the 20th century, using appropriate motifs and weaving them into his painting. Magritte created timeless surrealist works that despite the many times they themselves had been appropriated, still look fresh today. And also Dali interest in surrealism was highly influenced by the psychologist Freud. He used Freud theories to make sense of the division between dreams and reality. He explored the fears and fantasies that came in his dreams and represented his dreams in a ultra realistic photographic styles on canvas. And this is the influential works by Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Memory in 1931, The Melting Clocks. So, The Persistence of Memory or The Melting Clocks is influence of scientific advances during Dali's lifetime. The stark yet dreamlike scary reflect of Freudian emphasis on the dream landscape, while the melted watches may refer to Eastern theory of relativity in which the scientist references the distortion of space and time. And this is the Max Ernst example painting, The Robing of the Bride, 1940. So The Robing of Bride, 1940 depicts four figures in the sparsely decorated, almost medieval interior. The central figure is a woman, probably the bride, who wears the red gown open at the front to reveal his nude body, crowned with a large bird-like headdress. The Rubbing of Bride is an excellent example of surrealism, as Max Ernst defined it. The future transmulated of those two seemingly contradictory states, dream and reality, into a sort of absolute reality of surreality, so to speak. And the third example of painting of surrealism is René Magritte, The Son of Man, in 1964. So, Magritte stated that the painting touches on what we see and not see, the visible that is hidden and the visible that is present. We see this in the positioning of the green apple in front of the man's face, arguing us to face what we see and what we cannot see. Okay, and also abstract expressionism in 1940s to 1950s. Shaped by the legacy of surrealism, abstract expression emerged in New York after World War II. Okay, abstract expression works explore art in its purest form, authentic, expressive, void of meaning. The name evokes their aim to make art that, while abstract, was also expressive or emotional in its effect. They were inspired by the Uralist idea that art should come from the unconscious mind and be the automatism of artists. Celebrate abstract expressionist painters include Jackson Pollock, known for his unique style of drip painting, and Mark Rothko, whose painting employed large blocks of colors or convey a sense of spirituality. And this is the example of painting of Jackson Pollock. The importance painting made by the very affect of the artist's meteoric and turbulent career. Jackson Pollock's number 12, 1949 is a seemingly complete word into itself. It is a self-contained cosmos in paint made out of a myriad or of interlaced swirls and streaks of brilliant color that waves are constantly moving, almost involving complex pattern of painterly form and energy. And the example painting of Mark Rothko. Mark Rothko's abstract art attempted to illustrate how might and archetypes affected people today. As his work grew more abstract, he increasingly focused on light and color over forms. Eventually, he only referred to his paintings by number as well. Since he felt titles limited the viewer's understanding. Okay, and the next is op art in 1950s and 1960s. Heightened by advance in science and technology as well as an interest in optical effects and illusions. The op art, short for optical art, movement launched with Le Movement, a group exhibition, and Galerie Denis Rene in 1955. Okay, this painting and abstract sculpture broke away from what was considered conventional and intended use spontaneity and improvisation to create abstract works of art. These include colossally skills works whose size could no longer be accommodated by an easel. Instead, canvases would be placed directly upon the floor. Okay, this is the example painting of art, Bridget Riley's painting. The zigzag black and white lines in blaze create the perception of a circular descent. As the brain interprets the image, the alternating pattern appears to shift back on front, and interlocking lines and diff to the form as it rhythmically curves around the center of the page. The curator Joe Houston has argued that works such as Blaze trigger in the viewers an experience equivalent to an atmospheric electric charge, not an illusion, but the event really himself has said, "My work has developed on the basis of empirical analysis and the synthesis, and I have always believed that perception is the medium through which state of being are directly experienced." And also pop art in 1950s and 1960s. Pop art is one of the most recognizable artistic developments of the 20th century. Pop artists like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein sought to establish the idea that art can be drawn from any source and there is no hierarchy of culture to describe that. Perhaps the most famous pop culture work of art is Warhol's Campbell Soup Cans production. Then the pop art challenge, what one can consider to be art by using image appropriate from our future that exists all around us. It refers to its intended popular appeal and its engagement with popular culture. It was called pop art. Artists strove for straightforwardness in their work, using bold wash of primary colors, often straight from the can or tube of paint. And also the example painting of pop art of Andy Warhol paintings. The Green Car Crust is one of the masterpieces from this series. It is an unforgettable painting that makes multiple use of what is arguably the most extraordinary, strange, and disturbing source image of all those used in Warhol's famous death and disaster paintings, describing more than just the essence of car crust. This large electric green colored painting is a haunting work whose macabre and endlessly puzzling imagery startless. With its start, the repetitive photographic presentation of the mundane suburban street shockingly transformed into a horrific disaster essence, bordering on that of a surrealistic nightmare. Okay, the next example painting of pop art is from Roy Lichtenstein painting. In a yellow and white brush stroke, Lichtenstein takes the signature of abstract expressions, the Bourbaro brush stroke, and frames it within the pop idiom, the spontaneous and layered brushwork of action painting reappears in. And my last example from pop art painting is from Warhol's Campbell Soup Cans production. This is the complete set of 10 prints in colors in 1968. Extraordinarily fresh impressions. And the next.